Hello and welcome to the very first Echo movie review. I'm very excited to bring this to you, and it's a whole new series starting on the YouTube, exclusive to the YouTube, so get hyped for that. And we're going to start with the very first 2022 movie that I watched, and that is called The Fallout, starring Jenna Ortega, Maddie Ziegler, and is written and directed by Megan Park. So we're going to be looking at a non-spoilers version, and I'm going to give my thoughts on the overall sort of scope of the movie and talk about all the things that I can without spoiling too much of it. And then we're going to go through spoilers and yeah. So I'm looking forward to doing this. I hope you enjoy my reviewing style. If you care what I have to say, then keep watching. If you have not seen the movie, I highly recommend going and watch it. If you have HBO Max, it's on that. If you are British, then shoot me a message and I will help you watch it. And then come back and watch the review afterwards. Otherwise, watch the non-spoilers. And then if you really don't want to, stick and watch the spoilers. But this is a movie that you should watch. So, without further ado, let's get into the review. Welcome to the non-spoilers section of this review, so let's get into it. First of all, if you're expecting an action movie, that's not what this is. It's quite a slow-paced, character-oriented film that follows Vader, our main character played by Jenna Ortega, as she tries to process the trauma of what she went through in the school shooting, in both healthy and not so healthy ways. This film approaches the sensitive issue of school shootings in a very tasteful and indirect way. The director, Megan Park, directed some really powerful and emotive scenes that hammers the horror of what has happened home without all the graphic violence that they easily could have done to score some cheap cinema tickets. And I think that really lends itself to the film and makes this seem a lot more powerful and emotive. And that's what this film needed to be a success. And it is helped by the fact the cast all delivers incredible performances throughout the entire film. Ortega and Ziegler are standouts as the two, I'd say, main characters. They're really well written to feel very realistic and real, and you do really connect with them. I felt like I was really getting into this world. I was part of the friend group as I was going through and listening to their stories and how they were dealing with it. And just watching as they develop and process this trauma together is a really great experience. And the writing here is exceptional. It's just Megan Park did an amazing job, especially for her debut directing as well. I forgot to mention that in the direction section. Direction section. But yeah, so Megan Park did a phenomenal job writing this, and the two actors for the main cast were amazing, and even all of the side characters were good and had really great scenes individually with Vader. And that is something that you don't see very often. There's usually one or two pretty dud actors, and that wasn't here. Um, movie gives gives an amazing representation of how different people process trauma. It doesn't just say that this way is the way that people do it or this way is the way that people get over that. They give loads of different characters different reactions to different things. Some take it really positively and try and make change. Other people try and just get through it, get through their own head, fight their own battles, and both are perfectly okay ways of dealing with trauma. And it's a great way of audiences to see that they can get through things however they do it best. Sometimes therapy works, sometimes it doesn't, and I think that was a really important message that came through, and I was really glad that that's what they went with. Furthermore, Mia and Vader's relationship throughout the film is the standout factor, I think. It's just so well crafted that you love watching them fall into friendship and from not knowing each other at all to becoming these friends and watching that journey. And it's really cool stuff. And again, this is thanks to the writing of Megan Park. Um, and I think that really stands to reason as she needs to make more films. So please, Megan, I'm really looking forward to seeing what you do next. And I'll definitely be here for the ride. Continuing on the theme of characters, the adult characters in this movie are also handled really well, which sometimes isn't always the case in certain teen movies. Sometimes the adult characters feel a bit cliche and just there to be adults. But this time they feel like genuine characters and like loving parents who really care about their daughter. The parents and therapists, who was played by Shailene Woodley, who you've known from like Divergent, if you've seen that series, and a lot of other things. She's been in loads of things, and they all feel really real. And I'm going to keep saying that point throughout the film because it does just feel like a documentary almost instead of a film because of how realistic the characters are, and I think that is incredibly. It is an incredible success for a film to be able to do that. The dad, played by John Ortiz, delivers probably my favorite scene in the whole movie. I will talk about that more in spoilers about what that is, but he is excellent in this movie. Your classic, stable, your rock, and the rock for Vader, and I think he plays it perfectly. And I was rooting for him the entire time. There are a few pacing issues, admittedly, with the first 20 minutes and last 30 minutes of the film being absolutely flawless and amazing and some of the best cinema that I've watched personally. Um, and that, whilst the middle is still really good and worth a watch, it can sometimes leave it being less standout. So you're sort of watching it being like, when's the next great scene going to come through? And in those last 30 minutes, I mean, it's just, it's a whirlwind of amazing content. So you really want to stick around and stick it out. The ending is where I think most of the emotion and some of the best scenes are. So definitely stick through for the whole film. As I said, it can lead to the middle feeling a little bit dragged out. I'm sure if they cut some stuff, then it wouldn't change the film too much. But it's still great that the character moments that we see are still there. And for me, it didn't take away from the overall experience. I still felt that it was a really good film. The score and cinematography here is exceptional. Again, it's really well directed and put together, and it's in sync with the tone of the movie at all times. There's a really cool texting scene where they zoom in on facial features as the text pop up on the left and right. And stuff like that is just really clever, and it's out of the box thinking for how to make these otherwise quite boring scenes. Like when you think two people text each other, it's hard to make that into a really interesting scene, and they do that really successfully. So, and that's thanks to the music in the background as well, which is very somber and very mood fitting. So I think that is another great win for this film, because sometimes the score or the cinematography is just quite bland, and then you can sometimes get pulled out by that. I've seen that several times in movies. So yeah, overall, I would say this movie is a must watch. It's not overly long, and especially if you're bored in this long February, it's a perfect movie to just watch at night if with your family, or I watched it with by myself in bed first with my dog Spud right next to me, and then I also watched it with my family, and they enjoyed it as well, and they're adults as well. So it's not just a kids movie or a teen movie; it's for everyone. It brings the horror of what a school shooting can do into light in a clever and sophisticated way. That highlights the trauma that the victims and their families have to suffer. And I think that's another key point. Their families, it's just not Vader's story, it's everyone's around her as well, which I think is something that they very could have easily got wrong if they didn't show any other perspectives or how it affects other people, or maybe that Vader is just not. She is flawed in this movie, through no fault of her own, obviously, but she does have flaws, and you sometimes feel like that, but you see her parents overcome that as well, and that's really nice as well to see those characters go through that and deal with it in their own way, as well as just see it following Vader. I really love Vader. I think she's a great main character, and as I said earlier, she's really well written. And Ortega is a amazing actress. She always delivers great performances in almost everything I've seen her in. So I always look out for the movies that she's done. That was one of the reasons I watched this one. This was one that I was like, should I watch it? Yeah, the trailer looks interesting, so I'll give that a watch. And I did, and I'm so glad I did. And once again, the standout performances from all of the cast help to make this experience enjoyable from start to finish. And it has become a truly standout movie for me for characterization, excellent delivery, and handling sensitive subjects with emotional scenes. And I think this will be a movie that I will compare other characters to, especially teen characters. So if we name one that maybe isn't as good, we're going to look at Riverdale as a TV show. If I'm looking at the characters there, they're nowhere near as strong as these. And obviously, it's not the same subject matter, but again, this could have been handled so differently. And that's why I think it's so impressive, because this is a topic where if it's handled wrong, it can ruin the whole movie. And you can just have a really distasteful and um, failure of a movie, I guess. And it's really not. And for a directing debut, Megan Park, I am really thoroughly excited to see what you do next. And I am definitely on for the ride. If you do anything else like this, you're on for an amazing and long career. And I will fully get behind you on that. So, this is starting off strong for my very first review. And I am going to give this movie a 10 out of 10. Now, I get that people may think, whoa, that's really high. Are you just doing this because it's the first one? And no, I've listed my reasons before. The only problem I had was a little bit of pacing, but that didn't take away from the overall experience for me. And it is going to be one of those, when I say 10, it's not perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect because that's impossible, in my opinion. It just has to be a movie that I will hold other movies similar to it in similar genre too. And this is definitely one. If I see a movie that covers sensitive issues, has characters that are teenagers or going through something traumatic, this is exactly how I want to see it being dealt with in the future. So for that, it is getting the first 10 out of 10. And I'm very happy to be able to give this movie. And it's one of the reasons that I've done this review, because I was so excited. I watched it. I was like, this has to be the first one. It's a 2022 movie. It's it's not too long. It's about an hour and a half. And the entire cast just blew me away when I watched it. And I could not cover it. So there you have it. It's a 10 out of 10. So we are going to go into spoilers in a minute, but if this is where your journey ends and you wanted to see what my thoughts were, and now you're going to go watch the movie for yourself, I hope you really enjoy it, and I will see you back here for the spoilers. You better come back, because I got you into that movie. You better see what I have to say. Let's have a discussion. Let me know in the comments what you think about the movie, and I look forward to hearing from you. But if you're sticking through, I will see you in the spoilers section. Stay noisy, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye. Hello, and welcome to the spoilers movie. So if you're watching this, I assume you either don't care about spoilers, which fair enough, or you have watched the movie, and I'm very excited to discuss this with you because I love this movie to bits. It's one of my favorite movies of all time now. So let's get into it. I have got notes here so I don't miss anything. So we're going to be going through the film in chronological order, and I'm just going to be talking about what I think of different things. So let's get started. So it starts with an introduction to Vader, obviously played by Jenna Ortega, as I said, and her friend Nick, who's played by the very funny Will Rupp. They're kids or teenagers, and Vader is clearly a good student. You see her raising her hand in class and participating. Then she's called out to the bathroom by a sister who's going through some girl issues, shall we say, and Vader's being the good sister for her and talking her through that. So we get introduced to her and Maddie Ziegler's character, Mia. Just showing them to be teenagers. Mia's getting ready for photo day in the mirror, just as you would normally. And I really thought this was a great opening for the film. I thought it was great to see them as they were, as normal teenagers doing normal teenagery things and going through normal problems. I think that's a great way to start. And it sets the tone for these characters are normal, and what they're going through is not normal, and it's going to traumatize them. So you see the difference. It allows you to see what this trauma does to them, and I think that's a really great way to start your movie. So then we go on to the shooting. And it is so impactful. The way they do the scene where, so you don't see the shooter, you don't see any bullets being fired. All you hear is the gunshots coming out of the hallway, and you see the character's reaction to that. I think it makes it personally more traumatic. As you watch them hide in the cubicle, crying, they're in tears and having so much fear, which obviously you would. You do anything to hide. They put their feet up on the toilet seat so that they can't be seen, silent, and you just hear the gunshots echo around them as it goes on. Then we meet Quentin, who's covered in blood. And the girls are like, "Oh my god, are you shot?" And he's just going, my brother," because his brother was sadly shot in the in the shooting. And I think this is a career-making performance for all three of them. They were excellent in this scene, really emotional. I was like, "Fuck!" Even I don't get bothered by scenes much. I was going, "Fuck me." That was really rough. I nearly paused it and went to make a cup of tea, but I did not. I kept watching. Um, and that Quentin's played by Niles Fetch, and he's a really great addition to this as a different dynamic. There, you actually do see a bit of blood, so you're like, "Oh fuck, is he dead?" And then it's just really, really powerfully done, and I think it's a defining scene in the movie, as you'd think. And as far as school shooting scenes go, it is really well directed, and the cinematography, I love it. Um, as much as you can love a school shooting scene, I guess that sounds weird, but yeah, this was where it started going. This is 10 out of 10 territory right now. So then you are introduced to the rest of the family. So we see the dad, as I said, played by John Ortiz, the mum, who is played by Julie Bowen, um, and the sister is played by Lumi Pollock. There we go. So you can have all their names if you want to do some IMDb search. If not, search the Fallout, and then you can find the spelling of all that. And you see that how much it's affected them. The mum breaks down in tears, and is obviously trying to be strong, but you can only do so much when something so traumatic goes on. And they're clearly very worried for Vader, as any good parent would be. Then later on, Vader just tries to spend some time on her own and get through it in her own way. And Mia then contacts Vader, and this is what I was talking about earlier in the texting scene. Again, another piece of awesome cinematography. Zooming in on the different facial parts of the eyes and the lips to show emotion is a great choice. And they don't have any dialogue in this apart from Vader saying "fuck" when they find out Quentin's brother has sadly passed away. Which I think, again, it's a really clever way of just showing the emotion of the scene. And again, it's just handled really well. So Vayla is clearly struggling, but she's trying to hide it as much as she can because she doesn't want to worry her family, which is completely fair enough. She wakes up with a jolt. She gets startled, but she says she's doing better to her mum. She clearly has been having nightmares, which obviously you would, and hearing the voice in her head, not the gunshots in her head, and probably reliving it. Bless her. And it's just constant, well done characterization, which is really important for the film. Mia then, then we go to see Nick, and we see the shooting from Nick's perspective and how he's dealing with it, who is admittedly doing a little bit better than Vader. He wants to see real change. He's organized a meeting with a bunch of people all around the country, the US, to organize different things to try and get some change happening, which is a really interesting, different take. And it's different to Vader, and I don't think she understands that properly, which is fine, because I think that's also quite common, is how when you are dealing with trauma, you don't often understand how other people deal with it because you have your own select way, and like, that's the only way that I can deal with it. How can you deal with it differently? So I think that's quite a good way of doing it. Sorry, talking dries the mouth. So afterwards, Vader goes to Mia's house. Sadly, she's alone, so she's going through all of this trauma on her own because her dads are away. And they spend some time together and drink some wine, as teenagers do. And Mia can't sleep at all and is struggling just like Vader, so they're both going through sort of the similar emotions, which is where this friendship starts. So they then decide that they want to go to Quentin's brother's funeral or service, which again is a really emotive scene. And then I think a really, really clever way of doing it. You're going to hear me praise the clever cinematography and direction of this a lot because she just did a phenomenal job. We see Vader slowly lower service booklets into a little box, and we see 8, I believe I counted. And I think this was a really powerful way of revealing the death toll, and a really smart way to approach, obviously, another sensitive subject, which is the death of teenagers. So the effect of it is still clear, but you don't see any violence, you don't see any gruesome. It's not too hard to watch, which it could be if they went down a different route. So fair play to them for that. Then Mia and Vader start spending a lot more time together as their friendship starts to develop. Mia finally manages to sleep with Vader next to her, so they're watching like videos, and we see Mia finally get off to sleep, which is a really cute little moment with them together, and starts to really show how comfortable they are with each other. And I think that shows that she's really struggling with the loneliness of it. And I mean, if that was me, I'd be a bit, and I'd just try and get them to come home because I don't think I could get through it alone. So in Vader's mum wants her to go to back to school, like Nick, who's going back a short while after, but Vader doesn't feel ready. So, as a compromise, she goes to see a therapist, played by Shailene Woodley, um, and the two get along really well. And have little banter, which is really funny. Jenna Vader says about her porn addiction, and then that's a joke, obviously. And that's sort of why no progress is made towards Vader's processing her emotions about this. So we see that she's sort of trying to deal with it in her own way, but she's not really processing it. She's sort of just trying to push through and pretend we're just going to get through this. I was going to say she pretends it doesn't happen, but she doesn't. That would be a lie. But she's clearly struggling and is not processing it in the right way, and therapy doesn't work for her at this point. We then meet up with Quentin, who and the two just share a hug while staying in silence, just being there for each other, which I think is what they all need at the moment. And then we also see Nick on the news trying to make real change. So again, this is the varying degrees of how people are coping with the grief. Nick is using it to try and do as much good as possible, whereas Vader and Mia and Quentin are trying the other thing, just trying to be there. Quentin's obviously got to be strong for his family with his brother passing away, and that's a really powerful moment, I think. Mia and Vader meet up again and do some weed, leading to one of the funniest moments of the film, as we see Vader and Mia's change in personality as they are on drugs. Let's just say Vader is not a fan, as she becomes very chatty and then has a little freak out and then falls in the pool. But it's a very entertaining scene, and it was one of the few moments in this very emotional film that I laughed. But it really builds these two characters as likable, and you really root for them to get through their trauma. But you can see this is the start of them sort of going down a over this. She then buys and takes stronger drugs in class. It is a funny scene, but I think really it is quite telling that she's really not dealing with this in a healthy way. She's gone to drugs to try and clear her mind and let her think of other things. And it is a good scene. She has to be saved by Nick and brought home as she bites a pen lid and it fills her mouth, and her mouth is blue and she looks like a right weirdo. So she needs to go home, and I think she has a hell of a come down. But then not before she has a voice call with Quentin, who reveals that there was a bit of a weird message that he received with loads of emojis because she was stoned and had no idea what she was doing. But as a result, Quentin goes over to Vader's house. They watch movies and enjoy Lassie together. Maybe we are seeing some feelings come in. Maybe. But then he has to sadly go because of family reasons before he can go any further. But we see a really cute scene of Vader's sister trying to talk to Quentin, and that made me laugh because that's classic sibling thing, trying to get involved with anything. So instead, Vader and Mia go and hang out, and it develops more and more. They go out to drink in a parking lot, very classy of the two girls, and seem to be having a great time. They're just drunk. They're doing what teenagers do, at least in Britain. I'm not sure how popular that is in America. And then they return to their room, and Mia's clearly got something on her mind, and Vader knows this, so she tries to coax it out of her. And eventually, the two share a passionate kiss. And then it is revealed later on that they've had sex that night. The morning after, though, Vader wakes up, sneaks out, and promptly pukes because she's a classy girl. She does a classic one night stand and walk of shame. Um, but again, I think this is just it's up to really the viewer. They don't really go into it whether this is like trauma bonding, whether they genuinely have feelings for each other. And I quite like that is quite left up to you. I personally think that they just got to know each other and develop feelings, and then alcohol brings out that sort of side in you anyway. So it was the perfect sort of way to that done. And then they do touch on it later in the film, but we don't see Mia for a while now. So she then returns home and has a massive row with her family because her phone died. So they didn't know where she was. And obviously, at her current mental state, that's not a good thing. Um, so she owns up to being hungover with her mum and then leaves, saying that she's going to go puke in the shower, which leaves her mum shocked and very confused. She goes to see Nick, who's furious with her and rips into her for not calling him back and acting like nothing has happened in the school shooting. This is where Nick starts to be a bit of a prick. Um, and he insults Vader's coping process, and the situation ends with Vader storming out and saying, "Fuck you, Nick." And the friendship is in tatters, which is equally heartbreaking as we obviously saw at the start how close they were. And Nick had been a real rock for Vader for it all, but clearly he's just had enough, and he can't understand. This is what I mean. You can't understand how different people are processing their grief and why they can't act like him. But I think that's something that's strong for his character. Obviously, you're going to think that he's a dickhead for doing that, but it might be the case of if you had a friend and they were doing it differently, then you have no idea how you'd act with that. So I think that's perfectly reasonable to do, but I was totally against Nick from that point on. We don't see him from that, so that was his last scene, and I think it was a really good scene for Nick. I think he was in the film just the right amount. He did his job, served his purpose as a good character, and yeah, I have no complaints there. Vader then vents to Quentin, who talks about his brother and how great he was before the two share another kiss, which Quentin then shuts down because he's not in the right headspace, which causes Vader to have a bit of a emotional meltdown. Now, I thought this was I don't know. This might be the only other bit of the movie that I wasn't overly fond of. I don't know. It just felt after the Mia thing, she's then gone and kissed Quentin. Maybe it's her processing her grief, but I just don't know if it felt a little bit forced. Um, but I don't think it takes away from the overall experience at all. It's still a nice character moment. I love the brother conversation. I think that's really nice, seeing Quentin talk about his brother in a really positive way, talk about how funny he was, and how he was always there and really smart and could pin anyone out in a room who's going to get with who. And I thought that was a really powerful way of dealing with that for Quentin and getting through his grief, because he says no one really talks about his brother with him because they think he's just going to cry or something. So I think that's a really nice way for them to have handled that and showing Quentin and Vader's relationship. So the next scenes are where the film, I think, is at its best, and it really does deal with Vader's trauma as she starts to process it healthily with her family support. So these are probably my favorite scenes in the movie. I was just checking the timing because 30 minutes randomly ends out, but we're nowhere near that. So we then move on to a really emotional scene with Vader and Amelia, the sister, who have a powerful one-to-one talk in bed, where Amelia apologizes for nearly getting Vader killed because she believes it's her fault. Because when she called her out to talk about girl stuff, it obviously put her in the line of fire because she had to run into the cubicle, and Quentin's brother died in the same hallway. Was her reasoning behind that. But Vader shuts that down, and Amelia asks why she's mad at her, and Vader says she's not. She's just processing through it, and I think this is where Vader starts to get through it. And we realize, so in the shooting scene, you see her send a text. You don't know who that was, but you see her crying and send a text. And I didn't really think about it first time, but I noticed it the second time watching, so that's something to look out for. And that text was the one text that she thought she could send before she died, because she thought the shooter was going to come in here and kill her. And she texts Amelia, "I love you," and that was the only person she thought she could text in the world. And I thought that was a really, really emotive scene. and adds a lot to the sister, who I think was a little bit underdeveloped here. She was getting to annoy me a little bit, but again, that's just what little siblings are like. So I thought that was quite a funny way of getting that reaction through. But here, I thought, especially the acting for the young actress, what was her name again? Sorry, um, Lumi. That was she did really well here for such an emotional scene to handle it so well. And give so much character and emotion into one performance. It's just stand out. So well done, Lumi. I'm sure you'll go very far if you keep doing stuff like this. Then my personal favorite scene um, in the movie is she has a amazing scene with her father, who takes her to a cliff overlooking the beach. It's really beautiful, and the pair just shout at the world together. This is a really good father-daughter moment, and for characterization, it just feels like a perfect way for and exactly what her dad would do to get through this. And they both shout, they swear. Um, and they both actors just make the characters feel so real, and her dad doesn't invalidate her or condone her swearing, but supports her. And to me, this is the best scene in the film. It just really helps to make these characters feel real. And just I nearly welled up both times I watched this, because actually I watched this 3 times because I watched it again on my own to make these notes for the film. So that just goes to show how amazing this was, and I love this scene every time. Had my complete full attention. Just a really, really powerful and strong character moment, in my opinion, that truly made me feel emotion, which doesn't, and I'll tell you now, it does not happen often. There's not very many movies where I will sit there and well up. But this time, this got me, and I think that's a really testament to how amazingly written and acted this film is. After that, she then goes to fix her relationship with Mia, who isn't responding to her texts or when she knocks at the door. I was really thought they were going to go dark and she was going to be dead. Luckily, she's just passed out in the sauna, and the two talk about how they don't want to ruin their friendship, and things quickly return to normal as Mia says she's going to return to dance finally and leave the house, which is really cool. Um, and Vader says she'll be with her every step of the way, which is really nice. And I think this is a really strong final scene for the pair as they finally look to be resolving their trauma, or at least starting that process and getting through it together. And they're still going to be friends after all this is done, so it feels like a really nice bonding through trauma that has really helped both characters. And as this is the last we see of Ziegler, I'm just going to mention it. She is a excellent performer, and I know she's got some slack before for some other stuff she's done, but this is a truly exceptional piece of work, and she should be very proud of her performance here, because I was absolutely buzzing with it. Um, so then we go to the third last scene, and we get a much more positive therapy session with Vader properly talking about emotions and how she isn't being comfortable being back at school, which is obviously completely understandable. She talks about Nick and sums up all the different responses to what happened. I think this is a great character progression for Vader and a real completion of her arc, um, which has a really clear not processing her trauma, processing it unhealthily, really unhealthily, and then we start to go up thanks to her family. And I think that's a really cool arc. And seeing it go through, I really backed Vader, and I'm glad it paid off. And I think this is allows her to finally process what happened and start to move through her emotions. And her acting in this scene is also phenomenal and adds so much emotion to the scene in particular. And Shailene Woodley to also delivers a great performance. Just asks the right questions. She seems like a therapist. She seems like she really cares, and it's just a really, really great scene. And I know I've said that a lot, and you're probably like, every scene in this film is great to you, and I'm like, yeah. In these last 30 minutes, I loved it every second. And the penultimate scene, we get a scene of Vader and her mum who finally reconcile after their little arguments, and it's very entertaining. I watch this one with mum, and I know this is exactly how mum would act as well. She recounts everything she's done in the past few days and how she's been struggling with processing everything. She also reveals that she has had sex with Mia, and in response, her mum gulps down a lot of wine before getting ready to talk about it, which, let's face it, is what every mum would do in that situation. Hell, it is what I would do if my child revealed all of this to me. So I fully understood that, and it gave me a good laugh as like the penultimate scene. And again, it's just really nice to see Bowen do a really nice character moment here with hers, and the mum finally gets her moment to be the supportive parent, which I think is really nice. So every member of the family got a really nice final scene with Vader, and finally starts to look up. So I really like that. And then we end with Vader waiting for Mia outside of dance, and the two are back to normal, messaging really funny. Their relationship, it seems, is left to be up to the view of the person. So if you want to think that they got back into romantic relationships afterwards, then you can. If you would like to ship them together, they don't expressively say it. They just say they don't want to ruin it right now. So I think they probably stayed friends, but I'd like to think in the future that they were like, hey, I like you, man. And she was like, hey, man, that's cool. I like you too. And then they like boop noses and kissed. But then, so all seems well. And then on her phone, on a news app, it pops up that there's been another school shooting in Ohio. And we get a really traumatic scene. I mean, I thought I was like breathing heavy with her, of Vader, to have what I interpreted to be a panic attack. It might not be, but that's what I thought it was. And I thought that was a really sad but realistic end to this movie. I thought that's probably exactly how it feels when you start to finally push through another bad thing hit you in the face, because this world is fucked. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the spoilers of the movie, and I have to say, re-speaking it again just highlights to me how amazing this film is. And it's definitely worth a watch, even if you've got to this point and haven't watched it. I recommend going back and just seeing all the cinematography and different things that I was pointing out earlier. To see them in real, like, actually being done is a lot better than I can possibly say it. And I really think my summing up does not do this film justice, because I just say it's got great character moments throughout. So yeah, I think there's a lot to love about this film, and I will definitely be watching it again and again and again and again over my life. And it's probably got movie of the year contender. Ooh. So that is the end of the first review. I really enjoyed doing it. I hope you enjoyed me talking through it. If you did, I would love to hear your thoughts on the movie, what you think of the moments, character moments. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Did you disagree with me heavily? Or do you just agree and think, hey, this man's a great reviewer? If so, please like, comment, and subscribe. I just said about the comment part, but do it again. And I'd really appreciate that. The next movie review I probably do, if it's a new movie, it will be Uncharted, because I'm hoping to see that very soon. Otherwise, I'm looking at doing a movie review for Last Night in Soho, which is another movie I watched last year, so a bit more contemporary and dated. A bit more dated than contemporary, but I still think I want to do a review for that. But the next probably review sort of content is going to be Guardians of the Galaxy, which is what I'm working on next. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. I'm so glad I managed to do this. It's something I've always wanted to do, so thank you for letting me do this. And yeah, I think that's about it. So please remember to stay noisy and watch as many good movies as you can. Give me recommendations, what you want me to see me review, and I will happily look into doing that. Enjoy the rest of your week, day, month, year, life. And I will see you when I see you. Goodbye, guys.